Greetings everyone, it's Anna. I hope you've all been doing well. Today we are going to be recapping all of the books I read in March. I actually thought that March was a sparse reading month. I actually didn't think I read anything. Turns out I read a few books, about 3, so we're just going to recap all of those books. So I'm going to kick it off by discussing Symbiosis by Nikki Drayden. This is book 2 in the Escaping Exodus duology. I'm not really sure if there are going to be any more books in the series. For me, the way the book 2 ended, it kind of felt like a kind of neat and tidy ending, and I don't really see how the author would write a third book, so I'm just going to assume it's a duology. I reread book 1 earlier on this year, and I think that upon rereading the first book, I found that I actually really enjoyed it a lot more, and I was anticipating book 2 way more when it came out. Like, I read it pretty much straight away when it came out, and I was quite satisfied with how book 2 went on. So to give you a synopsis of the first book, because obviously spoilers for the events in book 1 and book 2, we are following a society of people who've been living in a space beast. Earth is a thing of the past because it's been destroyed because of poor use of resources, and so they're living in these space beasts. So it's kind of this new not fantasy, it's like a sci-fi setting that it's not something that I've personally come across before, so that was something that really intrigued me and I found that I enjoyed. It was a new environment that the author could play with and introduce readers to, and we're following the main character who is next in line to the throne of this society of people. It's a matriarchal society, so it's her kind of coming into her own in this world. The series has a lot of political maneuvering, so especially more so in book 2. I think book 1 there's a bit more action than there is in the second book, and in book 2 we are following a different person as well, so we kind of get to know a little bit more of the mechanics of the society, but also the mechanics of the space beast that they are living in as well. There were a few questions that were posed from book 1 that kind of felt dropped off by the author, but I think she did a really good job of addressing those in book 2. So I think I do like the way that it kind of events took place throughout the series. With the way that the society is set up, I think things can sometimes get slightly confusing, and I was definitely confused with things like especially the familial structure from book 1 that goes it carries on obviously into book 2, but it's explained really well, and I think that it really helps to understand the culture a little bit more once you kind of figure out like who's who, how does the structure work, and why do you have a structure like this. I think the author really also goes away to addressing the sheer brokenness of the society of this world. There were a few things that I wanted to know about, mainly so why the society kind of regressed to being what is the opposite of misogynist? I'm not actually sure, but the society was kind of anti-men, so to speak. So I think that's one point that I don't think that was addressed. I did have questions for, but like I said, overall I was quite satisfied with the way the book went on. This series is mainly about, like the title of book 2 would suggest, symbiosis, but it is trying to reach a balance with the environment that we're living in, with family as well, and also with politics and the political environment. So I think that she really did well addressing those points in a sci-fi setting, and it's just a book that for me personally I did find that it made me think. I enjoyed it, and these are books I personally do think that I will reread again, and I am kind of getting the bug to reread book 1 and book 2, but yeah, I do recommend these books and give them a go. I gave this a 3.75. I did enjoy it. I don't think it's the best book I've ever read, but I do think it's something that is worth giving a go. So the next read I have to talk about is Daughters of Nri by Reni K. Amaya. This is a book I've actually already done a review for, so I will link that up above and down below. I buddy read it with Murphy, and she's also done a review which I will again link for you if you wish to check that out. So I won't go into too much detail because I've covered all the things I want to talk about in my review already. Essentially with this book, it is a YA book set in a mythical land inspired by Nigeria, and I think it kind of follows Igbo culture a little bit. I know that some of the names are Igbo in there. I don't know how much of the Igbo culture is present within the book because I myself am not Igbo. But we are following twins who've been separated at birth. In this world, it is illegal to have twins. They are supposed to be murdered, but these twins are sort of hidden and they're separated at birth. So it's sort of this thing where they have magical powers awakening and they're trying to figure out like what's going on whilst trying to somehow make their way towards each other and navigating this world that has this evil king and trying to figure out what's going on with what he's doing and why he's doing these things. This was a surprise for me. It's been a really long time since I thoroughly enjoyed a YA book. I thought this was a fun one to read. The world was really vividly done. For me, I had issues with the author's pacing, but overall it was a book I enjoyed. If you, like I said, if you would like to know a bit more detail about my thoughts, then just check out my review because I've covered everything. Next up, I have Restless Slumber, which is book 2 in the Fortuna Sworn series. This is a self-published series that kind of took me by surprise. I think there were like 5 books planned. There's 5 books on Goodreads and I think she's only done 3 so far. And I was pretty surprised, like I said, because I've read quite a few, I haven't read a whole host of fae books, but in general, with fantasy, I don't like there to be romance. I like to be very intentional if I'm going to read romance in a fantasy story, because romance fantasy and romance in fantasy, they're not the same thing. So I went into this kind of hoping that there was romance in there. The romance in this series is slow burn. Okay, don't go into this thinking that it's going to be like love. It's very much slow burn. So we are following Fortuna, who is a nightmare. She's like one of the last of her kind. She just touches you. She can sense your nightmares and then manipulate them. So that's kind of her power. So in the first book, her brother has gone missing and she strikes up a bargain with a fae king. I do not remember which fae court he is the king of. He's just the king of one of them. So she is trying to figure out whether or not she can trust this guy. She is not really sure about him or what his motives are, all the while through certain events having to navigate the fae court that she is in. So I think what really struck me with this book is that I haven't read a whole host of fae books, but one thing that is often noted is how cruel the fae are, how ruthless they are, and I've never really felt that from the books that I've read so far. This was one of the first that I really felt how cruel the fae could be, which is what really got me engaged in the book. I think largely through book 1, it kind of felt a bit like it meandered until we got to the end and it was like, whoa, and I had to read book 2 and find out what happened. And I think that in book 2 we do get a lot more action. We get a lot more, we meet different magical creatures from this world as well, because it's set in modern day, so it isn't something that is going to be like an old historical. It's set somewhere in America in recent times, and I think that the author in this book really went places. The end of this book is the reason why I haven't even started book 3. Like, the author, she goes there, but she takes risks. She doesn't take the biggest of risks, but the ones she does take really kind of leave you sitting with things. Now, I'm not one that often needs trigger warnings. I tend to kind of ignore them because there's not really much that personally triggers me in books. However, this one is one that you need to heed the triggers for, because at one point I said, what was the reason? Why? And the ending was emotional. So I would say check out the triggers and be prepared for an emotional ending. So I'm still not ready to get stuck into book 3 yet, but I don't know where it's gonna go. I'm worried, and I think it's a good sign because I am looking forward to getting stuck in. Like I said, I just need some time to let things marinate and digest, and then hop back into book 3 whilst after I'm emotionally ready to get back stuck in. But I'm surprised I liked it as much as I did, but I did enjoy it, and I gave it 3.5 stars. And it is a series I'm going to continue reading because I think the author did a really great job. So folks, those were all of the books that I read in the month of March. I've honestly been slumping a little bit, so I'm hoping that April might be a little bit better, but I don't think it is because so far I haven't read a whole lot in April. But you know, sometimes life happens, things happen, and we don't read as much as we want to, but it's perfectly okay. So folks, do let me know if you have read any of those books, or if you are interested in perhaps checking them out. We can discuss all the stuff below, and I will see you all in my next video. Bye.